everyone. Thank you so much for finding the time to join us for this very special webinar today. Of course, you can see on the screen, we're going to be talking about college rugby recruiting during a pandemic. I know that many of you that are out there are having lots and lots of questions about, basically how to move forward. And, especially for that class of 2021, I know things are changing quite rapidly, and there's definitely a lot of stress and worry out there. So I'm really excited to be able to put this on for you and hopefully ease some of that stress. So before we get started, a couple things, number one, I already said it, but thank you. I know that time is precious for all families and for our coaches that are joining us. So thank you for being a part of this. Your camera and mic will be muted throughout the whole presentation until we get to the part with coaches, and I'll obviously turn on their cameras and mics as we get to that part. And obviously, if you have a question, go ahead and click that chat box to ask a question as we get through each section of this presentation. And of course, this meeting will be recorded and made available next week on the Rutgers Edge website under the latest icon. And if there's a drop down, there's also an online content section. That's where this video will be. And then also on our YouTube page. So a little bit about me if you've never heard me talk or met me before. I am a professional college consultant, so this company, the Rutgers Edge, is my full-time job. This is what I do all day, every day, is talk about college and talk about rugby. So that's why I wanted to put together this special presentation to make sure to get you as much information as I can in the wake of, obviously, the coronavirus and families being, stay at home and wondering what's going to be happening next. So here are some special guests that are joining us tonight. We've got Farrah Douglas, who's the head coach of Mount St. Mary's University, which is an NCAA Division I program. We've got Mike Miller, who's the head coach of Furman University. They're a Division II varsity program. We've got Sean Duffy with University of Arizona, a D1A program, and then Osborne, who's also the head coach of a D1A program at St. Bonaventure University. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining us for this presentation. So here's our agenda. We're going to go over the number one rule. We're going to kind of set the tone for the big changes that are affecting everyone. We're going to touch on NCAA for the female athletes out there and how coronavirus and some of those changes are affecting eligibility. Steps you can take now, both for in the academic sense and also in the athletic sense. And then we're going to spend some time with question and answer. So the number one rule, take a deep breath. So there's definitely a lot of feeling of panic and worry and a feeling of we're falling behind, or, I don't have a spring season, I may not have a summer season, and what's going to happen to me? How am I going to get in front of coaches? What is that going to look like? And, oh, the test just got canceled, or grades and all of that stuff, right? It's all getting rolled in there. And I really want everyone collectively, and we can do this together, just take a deep breath. Because at the end of the day, as much as I miss rugby, I miss going to games, I miss, seeing students take the field and do wonderful things, rugby is really not the most important thing right now. What's most important is obviously your health, your family, your friends, your community. I want you to focus on those things. And all of the rugby stuff, I really want you to understand it will all work out. So all the things we're going to talk about tonight, a lot of it is things that you can do, but none of it is you have to do. Okay, so definitely take a deep breath. This is more for your information. Take the pieces that work for you and leave the stuff that doesn't. But as we go through a lot of the recommendations, anytime you start feeling yourself getting anxious and thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to do all of it? Just take a deep breath. It's going to be okay, right? So the big changes that I'm seeing, that I'm sure you're experiencing as well. Number one, obviously high schools are closed. So they're all moving to remote learning, or have moved to remote learning by this point. So that's one big change. Some students are having issues with, whether or not they have, good internet connection, or whether or not their teachers are really set up to do remote learning. So there's definitely been a bit of a learning curve and some ups and downs with a lot of students I've talked to. There's been some changing with grades, whether or not that is the option to go pass no pass, whether or not that is your school just said, we're going to go pass no pass, or we're going to keep going as if we're in school. You're going to get grades. You're going to get an official transcript with, the same grades you would have if you were here in our classrooms and at our school. So that's something that's changed for quite a lot of students. Number two, the cancellation of standardized tests. So the SAT, the June test was just canceled. ACT is still at this point saying that they're going to host a June ACT, and we'll see what happens with that. Obviously, my guess is that many of the standardized tests will be canceled, because if the schools that host those standardized tests aren't open, if you don't have proctors that can do it and ensure that students are safe, they're not going to have that to move forward with. Now, the AP tests that are happening next month, they are doing that in a condensed remote testing format online. I think that's pretty much a test run to see if we can do a standardized test at home online, with the goal being, looking forward, none of these none of these testing companies, want to lose out on having all of these students take their tests. So they are working really hard right now to, see if in the fall, if there are, there's not any ways for them to do the standardized tests at your high school. They're going to see if we can do it remotely. So for now, that's the kind of stuff that's happening on this end. The academic side is lots of those tests obviously being canceled. Other big changes, because of all those tests being canceled, most colleges and universities are waiving the requirements for class of 2021 in terms of testing requirements. So many of them have now gone to what's called test optional, saying, look, if you have a test, send it. It will be evaluated. It can add to your profile. However, if you don't have a test, you won't be penalized. So at this point, it is pretty much college by college, or at least like a system-wide decision. And it has not been broadly said every single university and college is going to go about it that way. Now, obviously, I think if testing continues to be canceled all the way up through the fall, through September, through October, I think in that point, that decision's kind of been made for the colleges and universities, and they just will have to waive those requirements. So, what I would probably do is, if you already have a sense of what colleges you are interested in, I would ensure that you are on their, on their social media, that you have signed up for their newsletter lists or their email updates, so that if they are changing any requirements and things going into this next application season, that you are aware of that. And lastly, obviously, the biggest change that is affecting all of us is no rugby. Right now, tournaments, games, camps, pretty much through June have been canceled. That's what I've seen on my end. A big part of that is obviously for liability and those sorts of things. And many camps are hosted at universities, which are also closed. So, that's probably where you're going to see that happen. All right. So let's talk about academic, the steps that you can take now. Okay, so number one, continue to do well in your classes. So especially for those students, I get this question all the time. Look, my school at this point has said, whatever GPA you had going into the remote learning section, that's the GPA you will keep, but it'll never go lower than that. So if you had an 85, you won't get anything lower than an 85, or a B. You can get better, but you can't get worse. Or you have, schools saying that you have the option of going pass no pass, or basically, you're going to keep whatever grade you have no matter what. So then we've got students that are saying, oh, well, if I'm not going to get any lower than the A that I started with, I'm not going to do any work because I'll get an A. So for some students, it might feel like it is a kind of a free pass to do kind of lighter work this semester. I want you to think about letters of rec, which is why I have on that screen LOR, right? So especially if you're a junior, your letters of rec are going to come from teachers typically in your junior year. So while your transcript might say A, if your teacher decides to say, well, she got an A, but she didn't really do any work, that could definitely hurt you in this process. I also believe that there's many colleges that typically don't ask for letters of rec, that going into this next application season, if we don't have real grades, if we don't have real test scores, they're going to want some more evidence of what you're like as a student. And what that might mean is more schools might take on, asking for letters of recommendation. So again, the number one thing, continue to do well in your classes, do the best you can. It will help you not only in the admission round, but also with college coaches as well. Okay. Number two, register for those future tests, and hope that they happen. I think for some students, thinking that, oh, colleges, they're going to waive the testing. I don't have to do it. You don't have to, but it's very possible that those standardized tests are the reason that it might help your chances of getting accepted to colleges that are actually pretty selective. So again, the testing won't penalize you, but it's an opportunity. Let's say you're going to do really well on that test. If you're able to take it in the future, it's an opportunity for you to demonstrate that you can do well in those areas and that you can perform in that kind of environment. Number three, explore colleges virtually. So obviously lots of students, this would be a good time to start thinking about summer trips and visits and meeting with coaches and all those sorts of things. And you can't really do that now, but almost all the colleges and universities that I've seen, they have really kind of stepped up their game, kind of virtually speaking, to provide ways for you to learn about their college, get to know students, get to know different majors and what makes them unique. So again, if there are certain colleges already on your list that you're targeting, I would definitely look at their website. Most colleges have, when you go to their main site, there's going to be something that says like COVID-19 updates or like a COVID-19 page. And on that page, that's where you're going to see something like, brand new admission info session, or we're doing these special kind of panels with current students, things like that. So for example, Denison, which is in Ohio, every Monday and Friday they do a virtual tour and they do a live admission session with a counselor as if you were on campus visiting. So lots of colleges are having to try to navigate this process just like you, and they want you to explore and get to know them. So take a look at what options are out there for you. If possible, maybe add some more learning on top of your high school remote learning. So what I mean by this is not, okay, let's go ahead and add like 3 more classes. It's think about areas that you're interested in, that you're passionate about, that you're like, oh, if I had more time, I would do that. That's what I'm talking about. So for example, you're really interested in social justice. Maybe you kind of line up 5 or 6 TED Talks that you want to watch about social justice or about civil rights. Or you're really interested in photography. You might look online for free photography classes. And those will all be things that, potentially, some of your college essays or the questions that they're going to be asking would be, what did you do in your time when you were stuck at home? Same with college coaches. If they ask you, hey, so what's going on? What have you been doing? It'd be great to know that you've been taking that time to, just kind of challenge yourself mentally and do something different while you're at home versus I've just been playing video games every night for 6 hours, Last thing, and this is definitely in context of what's available to you in your home, in your community, what's comfortable for your family. But if you feel inspired and you're able to do it and you want to do it and it's okay with your family, you might think about ways you can volunteer to help your community. So number one, is there virtual ways that you can help? One of the ideas that I think was really wonderful is here in Colorado, in my community, there is a retirement home, and obviously they're on very strict lockdown orders just to protect the residents that are there. So what they do every day, the directors of that retirement home, they have anyone actually in the community, but a lot of high school students might sign up for different spots throughout the day. And they kind of have meetings with the residents that's kind of streamed and cast up on a big screen. So some, go on and they sing or they entertain them or talk about things that they want to do, just have a conversation, So that's a different way that you could go about maybe giving back to your community. But again, really nice way of finding a little bit more of a purpose while you're in the stay-at-home order. Could you deliver groceries? I have a student who, in their local community, they offer to walk dogs. So there are people that are immune compromised, they're older, maybe they don't want to go outside. So he's offered to do that, and that's wonderful. And then I wrote draw on sidewalks. I've seen definitely in different communities, there are students that go out and maybe just draw some like uplifting quotes or just say some nice things or draw pictures on sidewalks. And that's more just to kind of like, community build and just kind of put something out there into the world that's beautiful. And if that's something you'd like to do, that's definitely something you could also share on an upcoming application about things that you have done for your community. All right, everyone. So we're going to jump into talking a little bit about NCAA women's rugby. So that's NIRA, National Intercollegiate Rugby Association. This is, the current list right now as it stands. Obviously, you can see there all those schools that are in red. Those are the new programs that are being added to NCAA in 2020. So it's super exciting. If you want to take a look more deeply into any of these programs, please take a look at NIRA W Rugby. Right there, you see the website, so take a look at that. And we're really, obviously we're super lucky to have Coach Farrah Douglas from Mount St. Mary's, which is a Division I NCAA program, with us tonight to kind of walk us through a little bit of how this COVID-19 pandemic is going to be affecting or may not affect the recruits that are out there. So little bit of just update, because I've been getting lots of questions about this. From NCAA standpoint, everything that I've read, and I'm sure Farrah will jump in here as well, is that the current landscape, what we have right now is the NCAA as an organization is first and foremost focused on current collegiate athletes and transfer athletes. That's kind of if you look in all the updates that they've been sending out, it's mostly about, current eligibility for students that are already enrolled in their colleges and universities. The next step is probably going to be to focus on those prospective student athletes. However, as of today, so we're so lucky to do this webinar today that we got these updates. The three big things that I noticed in the document that I was going to pull up and just make sure to share, and Farrah's going to give us some more detail about this, is some changes for the core course requirements going from typically 16 to 10. And Farrah will give us more detail that if you're in classes that are now have gone from, instead of the traditional grading scale that to pass, no pass, that if you get a pass, it will be considered a 2.3 unless it lowers your GPA, and then therefore it would be basically brought into your GPA, but in a way that it doesn't bring down your overall GPA or affect your eligibility. And then the last piece that I noticed was that if you're taking online courses from whatever remote learning platform that you guys are now learning, in the past it used to be that whoever that provider was, virtualhighschool.com, whoever that is, if they were not an accredited approved NCAA institution already, they would have to go through a pretty rigorous review from the NCAA. And moving forward, and this is for class of 2020, so graduates right now, that additional review wouldn't be required. And so I'm going to swing it over here to Farrah. If you want to give us a little bit more updates on eligibility and coronavirus, as much as I know that, there's a lot of stuff out there. So generally speaking, if there's a few things just to kind of update the families that are out there. All right, Farrah, go for it.
Awesome. So I think the big things are really, in general, haven't changed, which is really focusing on finishing your college, your high school with strong academics. The big changes around the COVID automatic waiver criteria are that for Division I, you will need to meet the core course progression requirement. That's the 10-7, which means that 10 of your 16 core courses must be completed before the start of your 7th semester. So that essentially is, I believe, if I understand it correctly, would be the start of your junior year. So by 10th, when you're going into junior year, you need to have a 2.3 or higher core GPA. And then for Division II, your 10 core course units, still the same, have to be before the start of your 7th semester, and you must present a 2.2 or higher GPA. With all of the cancellations around testing for ACT and SAT, test scores are excluded from these criteria. If a high school student who is graduating in spring or summer of 2020 looking to enroll full-time in the 2021 school year, if they do not meet the criteria I just mentioned, because of their complete academic record, they'll still receive a waiver that's based on their pre-7th semester academic record. And that is for spring and summer 2020 graduates who are initially going to enroll full-time in college during 2021. So it's really important that you are hitting a 2.3 or higher. And you probably really want to be looking at your NCAA schools to know what the GPA requirements are for the D1, D2, or D3 program that you're looking at, and working with your guidance counselor to make sure that you're on track for the 10-7 core courses. So again, that means 10 out of the 16 are completed by your 7th semester.
Perfect. Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. Great. So, I mean, the only other thing that I'll say before we kind of move on is I think with NCAA eligibility, I think all the current coaches, I think all the programs that are out there, it's definitely still a little bit of a fluid, kind of environment right now, and everyone has to be, flexible with what's happening, because students don't have, there's definitely an access issue. Some students actually don't have access to all the classes they were planning to take. Some can't get the grades that they needed, testing, all those sorts of things that we talked about in the very beginning of this meeting. So I think number one, if you're out there, rule number one, again, just take a deep breath. I think if you have very specific questions, you can always go to a coach. Like if you are, interested in Mount St. Mary's, I think talking to Coach Farrah about your concerns, I'm sure she can send you to the right person to get your questions answered if she doesn't know. But now would be a really good time to start figuring out, do you have some deficiencies, and how is that going to be handled, in this current time? Yeah. Did you have something to say, Farrah?
Yeah, I was just going to add, because one of the things I think that we often don't talk about, and I'm not sure if you will have anybody who's on the call who falls under this, homeschool students will be eligible for the automatic waiver.
Right.
And the waiver relief will provide during a preliminary
Farrah, it just
evaluation
cut out. Go rewind just a little bit. You said homeschool students will be given the waiver, and then
yeah, and the automatic waiver will be provided anytime a student athlete's eligibility center account is evaluated. So that could be either the preliminary evaluation or their final certification. Proof of graduation is not required for them to receive the automatic waiver. They're targeting May 1st to begin applying the waivers.
Great. Wonderful. Okay, so we are going to move on to the next slide now. Okay, so we're going to get into some talk about some athletic steps that you can take now. And then obviously we'll have some college coaches jump in and talk a little bit about specifically some tips that they want to offer you. So number one, continue to communicate with college coaches. So show interest. So let's say you were, a couple months ago, you were in touch with, Coach Duffy or Coach Miller or Coach Osborne, and you're like, hey, I was in touch with you. Hopefully, hoping I was going to go to Tropical Sevens, and obviously that didn't happen. A lot of students right now are kind of sitting back and they're like, oh, I don't really want to reach out because I don't really know what to say. At this point, if you're still interested in that college, it wouldn't be a bad idea to reach out and just say that, right? Like, dear coach, so-and-so, I reached out to you a few months ago. I hope things are okay with you. I'm still really interested in attending your university. This is what I've been doing the last couple of months. Unfortunately, I don't have any recent film, but I'd love to set up a time to talk. So just at least showing some interest is a really big deal. And all the coaches have said that would be something they would love to hear from prospects right now. Number two, so videos. So, especially because we don't have games, a lot of students are really worried. I was kind of banking on having that awesome spring season or that summer tournament to really show these coaches what I've got. If you don't have videos, I think the next kind of quote best thing ideally is maybe some videos of individual skills. So, especially kicking, passing, agility, even just sprints, something to show on video. We can kind of see a little bit more what your body type is, how athletic you are, how quick you are. A lot of those things that don't necessarily need to be in a rugby film. Sometimes in rugby films that I've seen, it's really hard to even tell who you are. So sometimes at least having an individual film will give a coach at least a sense of what kind of athlete you are. Could they mold you when they get you at their college? So videos, individual skills that can be helpful. Preparing for online interviews and meetings. So many coaches are now saying that, obviously we can't get you on campus. So what we're going to do now is, basically do like what we're doing, which is a Zoom meeting or a FaceTime meeting or something. But if you're going to schedule these meetings, be prepared for it. So research that school. Be clear about why you're talking to this coach. Is there a major that you're interested in at this school? Have you been looking up the different programs and you feel like it's a good fit? Do you have questions for the coach? Make sure that it's a conversation and not just kind of a one-way talk. So if you want, start prepping, do some interview prep if you need to with your parents or someone you trust, that'd be really good. Number 4, gather more video if possible. Now, this is a tip from Coach Duffy, which, I'm kind of jumping on his thunder right now. But, if you don't have your own film, it's quite possible that you've played against other teams that have. So, however you can, or ask your coaches, ask other teammates if their parents have filmed, see if you can gather more video. Because obviously in a perfect world, that is what coaches want to see. Is can't see you live, we're going to want to see as much film as possible. Number 5, if you haven't already, put together that rugby resume, or if you already have one, update it. Now, if you don't have one, go ahead and just Google Rutgers Ed Rugby Resume. You'll find a website and you can download the template. But that's a really nice way of kind of organizing everything that coaches would like to see. You'll see a section in that rugby resume that talks about stats. So, typically I would say stats are helpful, not a big deal. In this current atmosphere, I would say stats are a little more helpful. So again, we're back to, let's say we have no film, we have nothing on the student. At least some stats will give me a sense of how fit someone is, how strong they are, how fast they are. So you'll see on that Google Doc, or not Google Doc, sorry, the resume document, there are some suggestions. Can you do a Bronco test on your own? Can you do a beep test on your own? Can you do a 100-meter dash? Can you do a 40-meter dash? And again, these are all things based on what's available to you. If you can't get to a field, if you can't get to a track, don't worry about it. But if you can, those are great things for you to maybe add onto the resume. Tied into that, of course, number 6, try to stay physically fit. And what I mean by physically fit is not just kind of your general workout, like, I don't know, just a jog around your neighborhood. Try to see if you can set some goals for yourself. So think about in 4, 5 months from now, if we do have a tournament, if we do have a game, if you are able to be evaluated, you don't want to show up there having really done nothing for the last 3 to 4 months. So some of those things, like if you do a Bronco test, if you were to do it at the end of April, I would want you to do it again in a few weeks to make sure you're kind of maintaining fitness or maybe improving fitness. Those would be really good things to add. Here are a couple resources for you if you're not really sure, what kind of workouts you could do. A Universal Sports Strength, which is that first link, that's run by Justin Goonan. He is the age grade strength and conditioning coach. So he's wonderful, provides lots of instructional videos and recommendations. So I'd check that out. And then also worldwideworkout.today that is recently put on by Josie Zaluka, who is, I did a recent interview with her last month. She's the head coach for Princeton University, as well as she's a director of rugby with Atlantis Rugby. She's with ARPTC and a number of other wonderful rugby entities. So take a look at those too if you're looking for ideas.
In terms of rugby specific stuff, it doesn't hurt to be really proactive. Email coaches, introduce yourself. some of the recruits I've brought in for our program, the initial conversation started with a recruit reaching out to me. There are a lot more of you than there are coaches coaching collegiate programs. So sort of being an advocate for yourself demonstrates some really core characteristics that may not necessarily be really visible when you're playing, but definitely are things I think that coaches, when they think about off-field stuff and team culture, are looking at. For me, video is helpful as well, but don't send me a highlight video. I'm an international prop, but I could put clips together to make me look like a badass fly half. But that's not what I play. So as a coach, what I want to see is 15 minutes of video where I know what number you're wearing. And what I'm looking to see is decision-making, general execution of skills. And if you can give context to a game, you know, if your team is playing the weakest team in your conference, everybody's on your team probably might look like an all-star. So kind of giving some information around the game that we're watching as coaches would be helpful. And following through, being really accountable. So knowing your timelines when a coach asks you for information, make sure that you follow up, you send that, make sure that you're on top of getting all of the things into universities that you need, your recommendations, your essays, your test scores, transcripts. So when I look at a student athlete, things I generally would like to have right away are an NCAA clearinghouse number. So I'd like them to be registered if they're interested, because that shows commitment. I like to have a transcript because I can do a pre-read, not only for the academic scholarship portion of things, because I'm a Division I program, so we do academic and athletic scholarships. But I can also, as a coach, look at a transcript and identify any core deficiencies that may arise with NCAA eligibility. And if you can get those things early, a coach can have a conversation with you early enough to help guide you with your guidance counselor around choices that might be able to help you be in a better situation academically for like NCAA stuff.
Great. So one of the questions that came up multiple times from you know, a couple different attendees, and I think Mike, you might have something to say about it, and any of the other coaches if you have comments too. There's definitely a question about summer camps, right? There's definitely some questions about that. Typically is a big
I think that
recruitment. So
yeah, I appreciate that, and I know that it's really stressful for what everybody's going through. But if you just take a deep breath and think about what makes you a good rugby player, it's reacting on the fly. So do your due diligence, look around, try to find camps. There are still camps in July that are happening, and attending a camp gives you a really good opportunity to do a couple good things. Number one, get out and play rugby. But number two, you're going to see how you can interact with that coach, what kind of strategy they have, the way that they lead a session. And then more importantly, if you're actually considering going to school somewhere, gives you an opportunity to be on campus, to experience what campus life is going to be like, and to make some friends along the way. So I would recommend you get out there and look for camps that are still happening, because there are still camps scheduled for July, which are a go at this point. And there's no harm in looking for those and signing up, because if anybody's running a reputable camp, if it's canceled, you're obviously going to get a full refund.
Great. So I have a question here from the audience. For a class of 2021, the season would have been when players would initially get noticed and get on coach's radar. So how does one get on the radar since this next season may not be since it may not happen or maybe too late? So I guess there's a question of they were kind of planning for this spring to like impress you, right? But obviously, or the summer or something, let's say that doesn't happen, can they still have that opportunity without true games or anything like that? That makes sense.
Good question. I think that Sean hit on that pretty well. People are not falling behind by not having a season. You're falling behind if you're not doing that extra work. Coaches can always take a look at your film from your junior year. And as Farrah just said, we're not looking for highlight reels. We're looking for match tape where we know what number you're in so that we can see how long it takes you to return to play, what kind of impact and decisions you've made, rather than just good music and 3 minutes of you scoring tries.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, to get on the radar screen, I think so. You know, our recruiting process is pretty extensive. It takes a long time. It's a sometimes 3-year process. And, you know, we have players from all different class years, you know, getting in contact with us. I mean, I had a 9th grader email me last week. You know, he's all excited. So I think that when it comes to the recruiting process, even when we're not in a shutdown, the getting to know you process is really important. And nothing is stopping us from doing that. The visits are huge. And look, I think to share some secrets with you, you know, the visit is about whether you like the school, and that's great. But there's also a big part of this, and it's whether we like you. So we're doing a lot of Zoom chats, a lot of FaceTiming, a lot of talking to recruits, and they have no footage. But to me, if I can see this athlete as someone that's coachable and motivated and a self-starter, that's someone that when I do see the footage, maybe they're great and that's fantastic. We got a winner, but I've already ticked off a major box. That's a major box. And there are a lot of athletes that have that talent, or they send the footage and then they send more footage or something along the way where they get bumped down the pecking order of our recruitment. So if we can get a major box ticked now about their character, then this is going to be a pretty easy process.
Yeah.
And I think during this time, while we're all kind of in this like social distancing, that there's a really big opportunity for you guys as players to increase your game understanding by watching rugby. That is my number one complaint with my team now, is they don't watch enough. Watch the game, look at the patterns that are happening, look at the cues, the decision-making, follow the best of the best who are playing your positions, and look at what they're doing, where they are when the ball, relative to where the ball is. Like, what are they doing away from the ball? What are they doing when they have the ball in their hand? What are they doing on defense? Like, study those things, because that may not seem like a lot, but that will help improve what you do when you come back to being able to play the game. And it's a really good way to keep yourself engaged in the game, even though we're limited in what we can do physically right now.
Great.
And be out of the box around skill work. There's still a whole lot you can do without actually having to play rugby.
So one of the students said, would it be possible to go over the NCAA rules as far as reaching out to coaches? As a sophomore, I've heard I can't call NCAA coaches. So like in a nutshell, is there anything for the contact rules, I guess?
Okay, yeah. So this part is common sense. Currently right now, NCAA Division I and Division II programs are in a dead period for recruiting until May 31st. A dead recruiting period means that you can't have contact, which means there's no face-to-face recruiting. You're not allowed to evaluate, and you're not allowed to scout. Evaluation means Karen is playing a game and I've gone to observe her playing the game because I'm evaluating what she does as an athlete. Face-to-face is, I said hi to her, introduce myself. That's face-to-face contact. Those things aren't allowed to happen. What you can do with NCAA coaches is you can have phone calls, you can text, you can have video calls. What you cannot do is a coach cannot have you participate in a Zoom team meeting. I could Zoom with you and share a video clip of our team meeting to show you what we were doing, because that's what would happen on an official visit. You would observe team events, practice, meetings, lifts, but you wouldn't be allowed to participate. So you could observe things, but I couldn't have you on a Zoom call with the team because that would be considered a violation. July 1st of the summer, you enter your junior year, is when a NCAA coach can have face-to-face, can like officially start to recruit you. During your senior year, they can recruit you whenever. I'm not allowed to actively recruit 9th or 10th graders. A 9th or 10th grader can initiate contact by emailing me, and then I can respond to that email. But what will happen is, because I can't recruit them, is I will respond back and thank them for reaching out and connect them with admissions, but keep their contact information. And then on that July 1st date, I will then initiate my contact with them. So you can reach out to coaches. We're just not allowed to reach out to you for NCAA programs.
So I'm going to just mention here that Farrah and I have been talking that we are hopefully planning to do a separate meeting like this with other NCAA coaches to dig deeper into NCAA stuff, because as many of you know, or maybe you don't know, that the men do not follow NCAA. So I've just seen some questions here about getting registered with NCAA, but the male players do not need to do that. And actually not all female players have to do it. You only have to do it if you're interested in those particular programs I had on the slide earlier today. Let's see. So I've got, my son had an injury and was out last year's season. This year, like everyone else, there's no rugby. He's a junior now. We literally only have a picture of him from freshman year, no video. So back to, I mean, I'm maybe speaking for Coach Sean and Coach Tui if he's still around, although he might have left for the beach. Oh, there he is. So, you know, the male coaches that are on. So this is a player that has like nothing. Does it mean he has no chance? Is it still going to be based on character? Are we now looking at hopeful, like a fall season, maybe videos? Like, what do you guys think for that family? And then,
yeah. So one piece of advice that I've given to a lot of athletes, even before this, is even if your games aren't filmed, and if there's any high school coaches here, I'm going to look in the camera and please film your games. But when it comes to teams that don't, I'm sure you played a team that did. And that's when you can really rely on your coach, and opposing footage is something you can get. I have players every single year where, hey, coach, I want to get you footage. My team doesn't film games. Work with your coach, talk to the opposing coaches, because I can guarantee you can think of 2 or 3 games where they did film it. And that is hugely helpful. So just thinking outside the box on getting game footage, because right now is a little bit of a unique, an atypical situation, but in a normal situation, game footage is absolutely vital. It's absolutely vital. And letters of recommendation are nice, but I think the coaches can speak to that. I mean, letters of recommendation are mostly pretty vanilla. And you know, let me guess, he has high character and he's super committed, right? Like, yeah, and a captain, right? Like, they're all pretty much the same. So footage is hugely helpful, and use your opponents and coaches around you to try to get that footage.
I don't know how much it applies to like the group that we have, but in my recruit classes, I've brought in 2 players who had not even played rugby but played another sport. I think that there are things to be said about just being a good athlete, in addition to all the kind of like intangible things that we're looking for as a coach. So it is ideal if we can have video of you playing, but it's not going to be the end of the world. And for those players who may be injured or coming into the game new, you're not limited in your options. I think that's when you need to really work hard to have conversations and allow coaches like myself, Sean, and everyone else that is sitting on the panel to really get to know you as a person and as an athlete, and the work of body you did outside of rugby, because probably most of you have played another sport. Rugby is still fairly new in the States, so we're all coming to it having played something else for the most part. So that body of work that you've done in another sport is equally as important to making when you're communicating sort of like who you are to a coach. So if you don't have all of that video, I definitely would make sure that you're getting your time to talk to your coaches so that they can get to know you, because there will be some intangible things that'll carry over. And I know for myself that those young women who don't have a rugby background, the reason why I brought them in my recruiting class was, 1, they played other sports, and 2, the effort they put into talking to me so that I understood who they are, why they wanted to come and play rugby, and what they were looking to get out of being a college, like a student athlete in college?
There's a program for every student athlete. So with no experience and no film, you're definitely not looking at a top 10 program, if you know what I mean. You'll be looking at a program where, you can, it's a state school, there's not much recruiting going on, but they need players. And those are the programs that'll welcome you easily if you're learning the sport. And obviously, if you have no film at all, those are the types of programs that'll welcome you. So it's all pretty relative when it comes to that. But if you're aiming for D1A, top 10, top 20, Sean's right. The only way to evaluate you for those standards of film. But speaking to what Farrah said, like it's all about how your character and what you've done in the past in a different sport.
So I have two more questions here, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So we've literally got like 2 minutes left. So I'm going to run through these two questions, and then I'm going to just kind of we'll kind of answer a couple of things, and we'll go from there. So for example, I think Farrah's point about other, kind of crossover sport, kind of athletic film tapes. So someone said, would football reels help? And I personally, I'm not a coach, but I've been telling students, if you have soccer, if you have basketball, wrestling, taekwondo, any of that physical type of sport, I would assume it'd be helpful. And you guys can chime in on that. And then the second question, if you did have footage, would sevens footage be more helpful than 15s because there's less players on the field? And those will be the last two questions. I'll let you all answer it, and then I'll kind of close out. So I'm going to unmute all of you, and then kind of whoever wants to talk and answer those two questions.
I'll start. I think the cross sport, if nothing else is available, sure. But if all things being equal, if we have rugby footage, I'd like to see that. I would say dependent on your position in football, it could have little to no impact, honestly. I mean, it really just depends on a case-by-case basis. When it comes to 7s versus 15s, some schools play more 7s, some schools play more 15s. To me, I really love to see both. And I think what I would say, and every program is a little bit different, we get quite a few emails, and so highlights are helpful. So we always say highlights are helpful. It gives us a little bit of feel. But as Farrah said, anybody can look great in the highlights. And so start with highlights, and then we typically ask for a full game. And if it's, most high schools are playing both or some sort of version, but if I have a preference, I want 15s footage, full footage, to really evaluate that athlete.
Thanks again for the invitation. Thanks again for everybody out there listening. Take this forced break as your opportunity. Show leadership. We all get letters that say how great you are and you're a captain, but show leadership by reaching out, calling a coach and talking to them, and be prepared. When your opportunity comes, you need to be prepared. Like Farrah said, watch a lot more rugby and hit the gym, because it's going to be a big step up from high school to college. And the more prepared you are when you get to campus, like Tui said, to earn that jersey, that's what you want to be doing right now in this forced downtime.
Now, so a couple last things just to answer some questions that were submitted. What I've seen now, because there were lots of questions about camps, what I am guessing is what I've seen some other programs are probably going to do. They're either going to move the setup, so it might go from a residential camp, it might go to a day camp. Some camps are also just potentially moving their dates later if it seems like they're not going to be able to host them at the original time. So I'd say if there is a camp, if there's a school that you are interested in, we're planning to go to that camp already, I would reach out to that, either the organizer, the school, whatever, get on their mailing list, make sure you're kept aware of updates or register ahead of time. And then, if you're able to get there at the later date, if that camp opens up in I don't know, August, then you could still go. That would be something I would think about. Sorry. And then Sean, did you have something?
Speaking for Arizona on camps, I'm going to tease you a little bit. Watch that space. We have news coming. Just stay tuned. Stay tuned. We got some news coming. I think it's going to be exciting. And just stay tuned. I think you're going to see a lot of schools do similar, but I think you're going to see some alternative types of camps that are going to sprout up. And I can say that I had a meeting this morning and it's a go. So stay tuned. We got some things coming.
Because there were a lot of questions about, because the spring season is gone, that I'm going to assume from other coaches too that I've chatted with, that it's not like it's, if you have a fall rugby season or you play in a fall tournament or someone decides to host something now in the fall we couldn't do in the summer, it doesn't mean these coaches won't be able to evaluate you, quote, later. You know, I think the traditional sense, most students think they're getting evaluated in the spring or in the summer. At this point, other sports are now having to push and evaluate later. So if it feels like the timeline's getting shifted, that's probably what's going to happen, and that's okay. And lastly, you know, just to, you know, if you're looking for more resources, you know, now's a good time as any, if you want to kind of dig in and start thinking about how do you go about this process if you haven't really thought about it. I do have a guidebook you can see there. It's available online. The Rutgers Edge Playbook 2020. You can use the code RE2020 for $5 off, and that can be mailed to you. Make sure you use all of the online resources. So, I mean, when you see, like, I post as much as I can on my Facebook page. You know, like next week, there is something called a Strive Scan. It's a 4-day, I think it's 300 colleges and universities. They're doing a virtual college fair. So there's lots of resources out there. Take a look at those. Check in with your high school counselor, see what they have as well, and, you know, take advantage of them. When they're available to you, take advantage. Just free test prep. If you are kind of looking ahead at doing an ACT or SAT, there is those free test prep opportunities. And connect with us. So we do have a newsletter, which we send updates with, our Facebook page. We also have a Twitter as well, although I don't update it as much as I should, but we do have one. And then let us help you. If you're really stuck and you're feeling like it'd be nice to have someone to talk to you about all this, I do offer a free 30-minute consultation. So reach out to me if you have any questions, and I would be happy to talk to you. And thank you. Here is my information. If you have any questions following this, info@rutgersedge.com. And then here are all the coaches that were a part of our presentation. So Farrah Douglas at Mount St. Mary's, that's her email. Sean Duffy, who's at University of Arizona. Mike Miller at Furman University. And then Tui Osborne, who is at St. Bonaventure University. So please feel free to reach out to them if you'd like more information, if you'd like to set up a time to speak with them. And I hope your family stays safe and healthy. And I thank you again for making time. And please have a good rest of your day. Bye.